We have a lot of experience. Thank you for recording. This is being recorded. And I'm going to share my screen. We have a lot of experienced VDRs here. I hope that you'll jump in and share your experience. Let me see. I'm supposed to be able to see my next notes. There we go. All right. So Volunteer Deputy Registrar, we're volunteers, we're not paid. That's important to the state to delineate that for us. We're deputized by the county election administrator to expand their reaches. So we work for the county election administrators. And then we register voters and we answer their questions so citizens can vote. This has been developed. I hope people will become, feel free to offer this to other groups. And if you want league members to do it, we can present it. The league, our goal is to register and educate voters and make democracy work. Citizens in Texas can register to vote in several ways. They can do it at the county elections office when they renew their license, either online or at the DMV, or with a volunteer deputy registrar, one of us, or through a mail-in application. And in the last election, 17 million Texans registered for the election. That was 78% of eligible voters. So we still have some more work out there. And as many of us know, registered voters move and they need to update their registration. So there's plenty of work for us. I don't have access to the chat box. So if somebody else can keep apprised of if there are comments, that would be helpful. So, do people want to share why they vote or reasons they know other people don't vote? I personally love this picture. I was really glad to see the Nats get into the playoffs. I think they did. And this is kind of what the league looks like right now. It's a lot of older women with some student interns, and that's not what we want to look like. So we're hoping all of you will join us and we'll diversify. So I don't know whether people want to talk. I'll just keep moving on until somebody shuts me up. Voting is fundamental to democracy. The league works to increase access to voting, and the league works for voters to be informed when they go vote. And that's why we'd really like to have a group in Kyle to help put on forums for the local candidates. After this class, you should be able to pass the open book VDR test and use resources to answer voter questions. And you should have the VDR test as a handout so you can complete it as we go through this course. I was supposed to call Jennifer Anderson and ask her if we could mail or fax in our tests to her office, and I failed to do that. There's been some mixed messaging about whether they just would renew your card or whether they'd want you to retest. So you're ready if they want you to retest. And as many of us know, once you have one card, other counties will recognize your status and deputize you for those counties. So we're going to go through the basics, and then we'll kind of get into more detail of the basics. We'll go through frequently asked questions, and we'll have time for your questions.
So a couple of the things in the chat are in answer to why people don't register to vote is they don't feel their vote will make a difference. They may have concerns about immigration, and they may not have any trust of politicians. And then also they may not feel their concerns matter to everyone else.
And hopefully if we get people to vote in local elections, maybe we can build that trust as it goes up, or we get people to run in local elections. So this is the in-person voter registration card. That's our major responsibility. And the card may have been in your registration packet as well. Those of us who are very familiar with this, we know this card. It must be hand delivered by a VDR to the elections office of the appropriate county. And we'll go over the types of information it requests. This is the mail-in voter registration card. And it's completed by the voter without a deputy voter registrar review. And it must be mailed in by the voter. So I'll reiterate, we serve under the county elections administrator. That's who we answer to. We meet the requirements to vote, and we can only register voters who live in the counties for which we're deputized. We are appointed for 2 years, so my deputyship expired December 31st of 2020, and I need to go get redeputized. It has been the tradition that I tested once and then I could renew my deputyship after that, but we've had some conflicting information about that from Jennifer Anderson's office. So, you know, laws change, and it's always good to stay current. Now, in the Secretary of State's information, it says when our deputy status expires, we're directed to return our unused voter registration cards. This was kind of news to me, so I'm sharing it.
I still have mine.
Yeah, so do I. But we'll keep that quiet.
I went into the registrar's office and took the test, and I asked them, and they said, "Oh no, you don't need to give them back to us." So anyway.
It's a decentralized system.
Yeah.
As a VDR, we register citizens who are residents of the county in which they're registering. They must be the eligible age, and they must meet competency requirements. So they haven't been deemed incompetent by a court, and that that guardianship restricts their right to vote. And then they must be unencumbered by a felony conviction, or they must be finished with the court requirements of a felony conviction.
The official term on that one is off paper. Is that right, Ida?
Well, it's sometimes if people aren't sure, if you ask if they're off paper, then they're like, oh yeah, I'm off paper. So then they're eligible to vote. All right, so we can register citizens of the US. We can register naturalized citizens. And at Texas State, the Honors College sponsors a citizenship ceremony, which I hear is a really, really fun event to be present at. They've asked the league to be there to register voters. And we all know that registering voters is really fun because people come to you to do something they want to do. But at the citizenship ceremony, it's supposed to be really fun. Now, native born, that includes Puerto Rico and other territories, although Puerto Ricans cannot vote in US elections on the island. But they can vote if they move to the mainland, so we need to get all those Puerto Ricans who have
What?
moved here registered.
I didn't know that.
That's weird.
Then, you know, a native born, that's pretty much all of us. A non-native born may be a false term. It may have come from a couple election cycles ago, but I like to think of Ted Cruz, you know, the controversy whether he was eligible to be president, but he's also an example of citizenship. He was born in Canada to an American citizen mother, which made him a citizen at birth. And then we register citizens who will be 18 years of day on election day. And now, because we have early voting, they may not be 18 when they vote, but they will be 18 by election day. You know, many of you may have had experience registering students in the high schools. I was registering on September 18th. The student was 17 and 10 months with some weeks. He would be on 18 on election day. So I went ahead and registered him, and it was a small drive. So I was able to bring that to the attention of the elections office when I turned in his card. Now, another thing, well, we can register citizens who have completed their court requirements for a felony charge. So some of those court requirements are probation, parole, and term of incarceration. A pardon counts as completion of requirements. So now that we're through, you know, we've just lost a president, there are a lot of pardons out there. And so those people can register to vote. It's felonies only. There are no restrictions for misdemeanors. And as Linda mentioned, if the person's unsure, you might ask the citizen if they're off paper, and that may make sense to them. And then this is just, you know, we do not verify, we assist, and we don't try to determine whether they're eligible. I don't really know much about felony convictions, so I got this from Texas Politics at the UTexas website. It tells me that some examples of felony charges are murder, sex assault against a child, selling specific quantities of controlled substance such as marijuana, promoting prostitution, theft of property worth at least $2,500. And once again, I'm not going to try and figure out whether they've been convicted of a felony, but these are some things that are felonies. Now, if the person has been convicted of a sex felony and they're on the registry that Texas requires, but they've completed his or her requirements of the court, they are eligible to register to vote. And once again, we only answer questions. We don't try to verify information. We don't try to figure out whether they're eligible. This is a memo that was on the Secretary of State's website. It's from 2004, and the highlighted area explains, you know, what I just described. Once a felon has successfully completed his or her punishment, including any term of incarceration, parole, supervision, period of probation, or has been pardoned, then that person is immediately eligible to register to vote. Now, I did speak with an attorney who works with a lot of election law, a lot of election cases. They were real hesitant to say anything about felony fines, outstanding felony fines. So they just said they didn't want to ask the AG for an opinion on that because they didn't want really actionable document that then we'd all have to follow. So if you have questions about a person, if a person has questions that they bring to you, I would suggest you have them call the elections office, or you know, you might fill out the card and then explain at the elections office what some of the questions were, and they may be able to call the person back. Does anybody have any more good advice on when a felony conviction question comes up?
In the chat, someone said, so for someone unsure, you would advise them to check into it, and we would accept and submit the application, and the person would see if it gets accepted or rejected.
Oh boy, you know, that's, there's supposed to be a check that runs against a criminal background. And I will, I think we have emails for everyone. So I'll ask Jennifer Anderson about that. When Jennifer Anderson reviewed this presentation, she said, I'm not an attorney, so I can't give any views on that an attorney might give. I'll check on that. I feel like our election system is fairly holy, kind of Swiss cheesy, and that there are people out there who want to take advantage of those holes and prosecute people for things that that are innocent mistakes. So I'll keep working on that part of voter registration.
Ida, might I add, I totally agree with you. It hasn't happened here, but Tarrant County, there's someone that was put in jail when she essentially followed the advice of someone and registered. So if there's a question, they could just call Jennifer Anderson's office and ask.
Yeah. And I also, when I was registering back in October, I had someone ask me, and I sent them to the voter protection hotline. I don't know whether I had called the voter protection hotline and then put them on the phone, whether, and we'll talk about the voter protection hotline later, whether that might have gotten the conversation further along, you know, because when I told him to call the voter protection hotline, that person had to follow up. So
Two more comments on the chat. One person said, in that case, would it be a good idea for them to provide their optional phone number on the form? And the next person said, in my experience, most convicted felons know whether they're off paper.
most people don't know if they're off paper.
Most people do.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's good. That's good. That takes care of a lot of the doubt. This man who told me he had a sex crime in his record, but I hesitated to say talk to your parole officer because we're all dependent on people that we're all well informed. So we'll keep working on that one. Homeless citizens may have an address where they receive mail. And so I attempt to register them at that address. A lot, there may be a social security check that comes to an address where they receive that. Now, I was talking with a couple of men, and one of them, I was in San Marcos, and he said, well, I received mail at my sister's house in Seguin. Well, at the time, I wasn't deputized for Guadalupe County. So I couldn't deputize him, but I could give him a mail-in form. And I think all of us know, there are a lot of people from Dripping, us in San Marcos, and those people in Kyle. People living on county lines can be tricky. And so we can ask which county they pay property taxes. And if they're not certain, we can go to the appraisal district website or ask them to go to an appraisal district website and enter in their address and see if they show up. A Apartment complexes can straddle county lines. And then there's those things where cities and school districts straddle county lines and people get a little bit confused.
Here's another question. What if people have a post office box rather than a physical address?
You know, you have to have an address because that decides your precinct. But that's a really good question. Does anybody have another answer for that?
It's my understanding that they must show a physical address, a street address, but they can put their mailing address with that.
Doesn't the form ask for both mailing
Yes.
address and a physical address?
Yes, yeah, you can provide both. For San Marcos, Redwood, those children are in the San Marcos School District, but they live in Guadalupe County. And then in Uland and Niederwald up there, you know, it's like Travis or Hayes County. And I think we
You're
have a
not?
couple,
Okay.
I think we have a couple of people on the phone who maybe are from Austin but live in Hayes County. So gets confusing.
Could you just give them a mail-in registration if you're just not absolutely certain, and then that can be worked out?
Yes, that's, you know, that's a good idea. And I think it depends on sort of the cycle as to how well counties make sure they're registering for the right county. You know, if we as VDRs can do everything we can to make sure we're registering them in the right county, we're getting the voter off on the right foot. But yes, a mail-in form, and then the Secretary of State may be able to tease it out.
And Will Weber says that utility bills are a really good source of providing the service address. So that could be for those people who kind of straddle the line. That could help them also know which county to register in.
Okay. We can write information on an application for a citizen who is unable to read or write, and that means they dictate and we write. And we may witness a mark for a signature for a citizen who cannot write. Then we initial next to the mark and we sign our receipt. We can accept a card from a registered voter for his or her spouse, parent, or child, and a parent may register children regardless of age. So the substitute signs as agent, and down here it says signature of applicant or agent and relationship to applicant, or printed name of applicant if witnessed by a signature. If signed by a witness. So we don't have to have them fill out the gender field. So that's nothing we're responsible for. We don't have to make sure that that's complete. And we also don't have to have them fill out the phone number. That's the applicant's prerogative. As it's been mentioned, the elections office might use the phone number to clarify something illegible or unclear. I think that sort of depends on how the elections office and how busy they are. And then it's also used by campaigns requesting voter registration data for electioneering, because voter registration data is public data. So we cannot verify information is true or valid. We cannot complete a blank field. I think there's been another case where someone's application had citizen checked, yes, but the person does not remember checking that. And that was another case that went to court. If the social security number or the driver's license is left blank, the citizenship, the date of birth, or the signature are blank, the elections office can't do anything with that application. So they are supposed to send out a letter saying we couldn't process your application. Please come into the office and fill it out again. And then, of course, we cannot pick and choose our voters by party or other affiliation. We are nonpartisan as voter registrars. So this is an article from RT, the Russian news source, and I think some of us would say that's probably not a very legitimate source of news, but it does show what we cannot do. We cannot fill out applications for people without their consent of signature. And this was a social worker at a Texas State Supported Living Center, which is a government-run facility for the developmentally delayed. So it brings up a couple of issues. One, competency. Are these citizens under a guardianship or competency agreement created by a court? And does it do they retain the right to vote, or has that right been taken away through the competency? And then another issue is, have the citizens filled out their own card? And if they were unable, have they dictated the information to the registrar and signed with their signature or an X? So as many of us would say, you know, rather than registering voters at work, it might be good to call in the league and get a voter registration drive and get yourself out of the middle of it. This is another, you know, reminder that voter registrars are under a microscope. This came from the Fulcrum, and the Fulcrum publishes its donors and its mission on its website. The league also is really into trying to help people figure out what might be fake news and being able to identify the slant of whatever they're finding, so they kind of understand what direction, political direction it's coming from, and whether it's true or fake. So anyway, voting rights are targeted now. Some people think that making it more difficult to vote seems logical, and we just need to remember that our job is to register voters, check their application for omissions or simple errors and illegibility. We answer questions about voting dates, sources of information about candidates, but we cannot verify the information. We cannot complete an incomplete form. So before the person gets away from us, we want to make sure it's complete. And so again, we cannot advise on how to answer a question, but we can give out phone numbers. You might want to call the elections office or whatever. And as many of us know, and as I've stated, a blank citizenship question, driver's license, social security number, signature, date of birth, the application cannot be processed. And that's what Jennifer Anderson wanted to make sure I reiterated. So application stallers, if the address is a dorm or apartment and there's no unit number on there, then that card's going to be mailed out and it'll be returned as undeliverable. So the voter may be placed in suspense, and the address must be verified when they show up at the polls. My son moved from San Marcos to Austin, and he moved to South First. And I registered him because I'm a VDR in Travis, and I took it to airport, and Matt looked at that card and he saw that my son lived on South First. He goes, "There's no apartment number on here." So I had to call my son and get his apartment number. And you know, some people just know those streets that are going to have an apartment number, and hopefully we'll be one of them, and we won't let that get by us. At the university, sometimes the kids get excited and they'll put their today's date. The date they're filling it out is their date of birth. So we must deliver the cards to the appropriate county office within 5 days of the signature. The 5th day after receiving it by 5 p.m. So if I collect the cards on Wednesday, I have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday is the last day I can get those cards to the election office and to the appropriate elections office. There was, Hayes County said that they would make sure that Travis County cards got to them. But if we can get cards to the right county office, we'll make sure that we're not depending on someone else. Another volunteer deputy from that county can deliver cards for you. So Dripping is a really long way from San Marcos. And so the voter VDRs often take turns delivering them up to San Marcos, or the same with Travis County, Bexar County. And they must be hand delivered, not mailed. So we must sign the card, we must date the card, we must write our VDR ID on there and give the registrant the receipt. This verifies the registration and it holds us accountable. So this, in the last election, I worked in the November 2020 election, and the last day to register was less than 30 days prior to the start of early voting. And as a poll worker, we noticed the valid date was initially an issue for voters. They bring in their card, but they weren't in our poll book. And we were able to call the elections office, and they got that straightened out for us pretty quickly. According to Jennifer Anderson, she says, and what happened with this election, we had so many mail-in applications because of COVID, and because it was a really big election, a lot of those came in right close to the deadline. So Jennifer said, sometimes if we input a registration after the 30-day deadline and we forget to backdate the application, there's an issue with the effective dates. So she said, if the voter registers in time, which we can verify by looking at the application, we can correct this problem with our poll book vendors. And, she said, we never penalize voters that follow the process correctly. So I would, that's the great thing about registering voters and working the polls is you see how all this fits together. I feel like our elections office was very responsive to calls and trying to help us out. This was, I believe I got this from the Texas Trib, and this was in a county somewhere close to Dallas. I'm afraid I forgot to put my citation on here. But the voter, Tarrant County, she went in and she went in to vote. She had her card with her. On the Secretary of State's website, she was showed as active, but at the polls, when they tried to vote early, her fiance was able to vote, but she was not. And that was with that poll book thing. Up there, the poll worker required her to vote provisionally. And then they told her it was a lot of paperwork. It probably wouldn't count anyway, which is a horrible thing for a poll worker to say. But, I would encourage a voter like this to request that the poll worker call the elections office. And then if I don't get a satisfactory answer, I'm going to tell that voter to call the election protection hotline, which we'll talk about. I'll give you the number in a few slides.
I know there were a couple of questions about homeless. One question, what was the deal on homeless? And the second comment was, when I trained in Travis County, they told us the homeless person could list an intersection or other location nearest to where they usually could be found.
Yes, and that's what I was told also in Austin, and that's, you know, that's that's good because that identifies a precinct. Now the card will be mailed back to the elections office, so they'll be placed in suspense, and they just have to verify their address. But that works. I was also told that in Austin, there's some liquor stores where people are able to cash their Social Security checks. And, you know, if that liquor store will allow them to use that as their address, and they've got a precinct, they've got a place to get their card, and, you know, they've got an address. So I have never registered someone at an intersection, and I haven't tried that in Hayes County, but it does give a person a precinct. And as long as they show up at the polls and they can, you know, they have a proper ID, then they should be able to vote.
One of the things I ran into is I changed my mind after I did a vote by mail application and went in to vote in person, and they tried to do ballot. Some have to put like ask questions, call. As it turned out, I was real clear that I didn't have to do a provisional ballot, but sometimes I have to explain to people that have to help people where the problem is.
Yeah, that was a big issue in Hayes County, and I think probably around the state, in that so many people requested mail-in ballots, and then as you know, as things transpired, they decided to come to the polls. So if they didn't bring their paper ballot with them, then they voted provisionally. And if the paper ballot wasn't received by the deadline, then their provisional ballot counted. And that was
But even if you had the paper ballot to turn in, what you had from the vote by mail, some of the poll workers weren't clear on that. And so sometimes you really have to ask questions and get people to help you figure it out, or you help them figure it out.
There are several of us who have been planning a poll worker training. And I know that there are probably some folks on this call who would love to help with that. Just so we can have better informed poll workers. We can have poll workers who are like having fun, and we can make the voting experience really great for the poll worker and the voter.
Can I
So, yeah.
Just a short story about that, because without the poll worker, I don't think my granddaughter would have been able to vote, maybe provisionally, but she did not get her voter registration card. I couldn't register her because you can't register a grandchild. So I gave her a mail-in vote. She didn't get her card. She didn't get her card. And she's like, she was turning 18 before the November election. She couldn't get through to the anyone at the Hayes County Elections Office. She finally did it, and they said, just go in, and when you get there, have the poll worker call us, because what had happened was her driver's license didn't match her name because it's O'Donnell. She wrote it the way it was on her driver's, she wrote it the way she normally does with an apostrophe. But it was no apostrophe, and they wouldn't accept it. But they figured it out. The poll worker called, figured it out, and she was able to vote. So it depends on, you know, the person at the polls, because if they hadn't gone through the extra step, she wouldn't have been able to vote.
And we'd really like to get more of those people working the polls who are willing to take that extra step and know what that extra step might be.
I'm an apostrophe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a pain in the neck. It's however it was put in, and you never know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am sympathetic to apostrophes. I'm going to be a poll worker.
So for those people who might miss the deadline for an upcoming election, The first, if they're registered in Texas, if the voter moves within the county, this may change their precinct, but not their voting county. And they may vote on election day and update their address. So if I move from San Marcos to Kyle, I can vote, and the voting clerk may tell me my application is in suspense. They mailed me my card, but it was returned. I must fill out a new card. And, I believe this is, I'm telling you the truth. You're going to vote in your old precinct. You're going to vote for your old candidates, but you'll be able to vote. And then when you fill out that card, you'll be registered in your new precinct. I really encourage realtors to remind clients at closing, give them a voter registration card so that that's taken care of. If Texas registered voters move outside the county in which they're registered, then they should register in the new county by the deadline. If they fail to do that, then they will vote a limited ballot in their new county. And a limited ballot is one that includes statewide and federal races. It is only available during early voting. So it just reinforces that we should all try to vote early, just in case. And that's only if they are actively registered in another Texas county. When I vote a limited ballot, the form I use to apply for the ballot will also register me for future elections. And I'll get a voter registration card in the mail based upon the information I provided. Now, if I go to the polls on election day in this scenario, I can only vote provisionally. I can only vote a provisional ballot, and then the ballot board decides whether that ballot counts. And then if voters are not registered and they show up to vote, then they will vote provisionally. The application they fill out to vote provisionally automatically registers them for the next election, and they'll receive a voter registration card in the mail. So, VDRs can photocopy blank applications if they run out, but they cannot photocopy completed applications. We can write down voters' addresses and phone numbers if we wish to contact them about early voting dates and the like after our drive. And we may photocopy the receipt for, that doesn't really give you anything other than the name. If we're creating a voter registration event, make sure you bring your pens, cards, and your voter deputy registrar certificate. You can have runners or checkers who are not deputized, and they can hand out applications and they can give back receipts. But only VDRs can sign the card, and only VDRs can deliver it to the appropriate elections office. So when I'm doing an event, I ask someone who approaches me, are you registered to vote at your present address? Because in San Marcos, we have a lot of mobile people. And in Texas right now, we have a lot of people moving. And if they say they don't know, I ask them to take out their phone and go to votetexas.gov. And then where it says, am I registered? They have several ways of identifying who they are, and they can check if they're registered and in what county they're registered, or if they're in suspense, it will tell them that. So this is just part of the Secretary of State's website. It should be the most reliable information for a voter to check current registration. On their cards or on the website is the date of eligibility. That's that thing that kind of got us in trouble this last election for a while. Now, this is the number for the Election Protection Hotline. The Election Protection Hotline is a national effort. But, you know, this is the Texas number, and you can see all the organizations that are part of the coalition that support the Election Protection Hotline. And around election time, it's staffed by volunteer attorneys. And it's a really, I think it's a really great thing because it can collect trends across counties. If something is happening at one voting location, they'll call the elections office, and then the elections office calls that voting location and tries to straighten out whatever the issue is. So I think it's a wonderful, wonderful resource. They have volunteers trying to staff the polls during the elections. All right, I have a slide here for questions, and then I have a slide for online resources and some plugs for the league. Does anybody have questions right now?
We had Tucker here with some questions about voter registration accessibility for people who have a second language, don't speak much English, or who are deaf or hard of hearing.
All right. Deaf, the application is written, but you're right. It would be really great to get some sign language VDRs so we could answer those questions, because we should be accessible. And they do have voter registration cards in Spanish, but we really need more volunteer deputy registrars who are bilingual. At the college, we had a lot of folks come up from Redwood, and it was really great having those bilingual VDRs to be there as resources. So Tucker, if you know some folks, I'm happy to share this presentation with you or with other organizations so that we can get a diverse group of volunteer deputy registrars. This is the votetexas.gov website. And you know, I can provide this to y'all as a PDF, so you have it all. The presentations website link and the exam, and then frequently asked questions. Some of the organizations that really take election law and voter protection seriously are Common Cause, Texas Civil Rights Project, and then the Election Protection Organization. And then we hope that you will join us, and we hope you'll increase the diversity of our organization and our views, ethnicity, background, age, language.
Ida, I think someone missed your comments about the exam. There's a question that asks, do we need to take the exam if we are recertified?
You know, we had unclear information about that. I have not had to do that in the past, but we had 2 people call the Hays County election office, and one was told, no, you don't, and one was told, yes, you do. So, you know, you're prepared, and if you have it with you right there, you can take it in with you. You know, it's not a hard exam. You're ready to take it.
If you're deputized in one county, can you just go to another county if you ever want to work in that county and just you don't have to take the exam again?
I have been able to do that. I was deputized in the last cycle in Guadalupe, Caldwell, Comal, Travis, and all of those just let me show one card, and they let me become a deputy in their county. Now, like Comal and Guadalupe have the certain, you know, they want you to write down, keep a list of all the people you register. So counties have different ways of what they want you to do.
Another question, do we have access to the PowerPoint information? I tried to download 2 resource pages, but they had been removed.
I will make sure I get the PDF to everyone.
And does the test need to be taken in person? You said something about bringing the test to the elections office.
Well, I think you can take it to the elections office with you. I've heard that sometimes they'll scramble, like if they want you to take it there, they scramble the questions up. So number 1 might be number 9, but
Not accepting this call. Thank you.
but nothing has been I can't tell you exactly what decision they're going to make because it's kind of up to the elections administrator. I would imagine that they will not require everyone to take a test. It seems like it'd be kind of painful on their part, but I've had mixed information about that.
Here's another question. If my card expired in December 2020, can I just take it to Jennifer's office to be recertified?
Yeah, you should be able to. You should, in the past, all they've made me do is say, I'd like to re-deputize, and they've done that. But we got some rather inconsistent information this year. And in Travis County, they've always just let me re-deputize. All right. Is that it? These are, if you care to join the league, you can go to the League Hayes County website and you can join using PayPal. And I think if anybody wants to, we're going to have Aaron Zwiener speak to us on March 5th. Is that right, Linda? I'll stop sharing my screen.
I think it's March 4th.
March 4th, and then on the 18th, we're going to have the new police chief for San Marcos. And those are the only dates I have right now for events. That the police chief will be in a happy hour format. We'll have a panel to ask questions. Likewise, with Aaron Zwiener, we're going to have a panel. And the thing we'll be doing with her is we'll actually be telling her what the league will be interested in this cycle. To that has been added the whole climate weather change problems. But then with that panel, Dorothy is really the person that knows most about what we're doing, Aaron Zwiener. Dorothy, did I mess it up? Or is that pretty
No, you're right. And I was just typing it in that Aaron will answer panel questions on the league priorities for this year, voting rights, and
I'm having a blank too.
yeah, I know.
Election law and voting rights and
legislative issues.
no.
Redistricting.
Redistricting, thank
Of course.
you.
I'm gonna write it down right here.
Next Thursday, March 4th at 5 o'clock.
There. It's in
Date of
writing.
March 4th at 5 o'clock, is that right? Is
Yeah,
that what-
5 o'clock, we'll have a short meeting, and then questions for Aaron Zwiener will begin at 5:30. And we're setting aside an hour for that. So the panel, there's, let's see, 5 people on the panel. So we'll have at least 5 questions from the panel, but I think as time permits, we might be able to take questions from people, but I'm not sure about that. We got to work with that timing some.
But we will
With
also
the panel, yeah.
be telling Aaron what the league priorities are. And as I said, this weather event has at least changed it. Again, please go to our newsletter that was sent out yesterday morning, and poke the little take action button. A letter will pop up for you. Just send. That is the 25th. That letter will be for the Senate and House committees. And our letter explains step by step what you need to do to tell them how we feel about having no electricity, no drinkable water. I could go on.
February.
I have a
February,
couple
yeah.
more things that have popped up in the chat. Do we pick up voter applications and mail-in cards at the elections office?
Yes, yes, you do.
So, Susan, would you post the URL for the My LWV Hayes County in the chat? And someone said, I'm still unclear as to when I'm to take the test and when. Are we waiting on word from Jennifer?
No, you can take the test at any time.
Okay.
And do you mean, should I take it at home?
I think that's what she meant. She didn't say.
Yeah, I would go ahead and take the test and take it in with you. And then if they say, no, you need to finish that here, then you have your test and the answers as a reference.
And even if the questions are rearranged, you can do it there.
Yeah.
So, can I just start it? So it's basically an open book test.
It is an open book test.
And Lucinda had a question.
Yes, for anybody in the Dripping Springs area, we keep some supplies of registration cards at the hub in Dripping Springs. You know, if that's closer for people so they don't have to drive all the way to San Marcos.
Yeah.
Linda said, so where is the test? So Ida, if you're gonna send out the PowerPoint again, then the test was the other attachment that you had sent earlier.
Yes. And I thought I sent out the attachment with the test and stuff from the league address today. It turns out I sent it from admin@lwvhaceco.com, which is my personal league address. And so you should have the attachment of the tests there, and then also the official state of Texas training manual that's used as your open book for taking the test. And so those two were attached to that, but it wasn't under the lwvhaceco@gmail.com address. It was admin@lwvhaceco.com.
So we look forward to registering voters with all of you, and we'll try to keep everyone informed of events, and you keep us informed. Thank you. I'm through. Thank you for your time.
Good job, Ida. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
good, Ida.
I wanted to make a suggestion that some of you who are not members of the league might want